Ron Bales and I are in the home of John C. Deal, who's known as JC or Jake, to his many friends and relatives. JC has agreed to share with us some of the facets of his interesting life that are largely unknown to many of his relatives and his friends alike. So we thank him for that at the outset. Let's just start out right at the beginning. Tell us where and when you were born and some of the first things that you remember about your childhood.
Well, I was born in a hospital there at Hawks Park, which is now Edgewater, on the 5th of February, 1919, at 6 o'clock in the evening. And the doctor was Dr. Davis Foster. At the time, my family, my mother and father, were living south of Oak Hill that they call Shiloh Point. And my father had built a home there, and he had an orange grove. And my first remembrances was they had my mother's father's brother, Henry, had a problem with alcohol, and so he came down there to our place to sort of dry out. And I remember that he would teach me how to trap chickens. My father had chickens there, and we'd get an apple crate, and we'd lift the apple crate up on one end and put a stick under it and then tie a string to that. And so a chicken put scratch feed under the box, and the chicken would come there, eat the scratch feed, we'd jerk the post out from the box, and the box would fall down on the chicken.
That's a great story. Did the other chickens learn?
I guess so. But my father had his own electric plant there. It was a Delco Remy, I think. And it was a type, I don't know whether that's AC, DC, or what. They had a series of batteries there and an electric motor that charged them. So we had our own electricity. And then in about 1924, the Wright family had moved up to the...
You're 5 years old then?
Yeah. The Wright family had moved up to Coronado Beach, and they had bought the John Adams apartments. And so my father and my mother decided to build up there. And so we built a home on Florida Avenue about 1924, as I remember. There was no paved streets. The streets were all sand, shell. I presume there would be maybe 100 people that lived in Coronado Beach. I remember your dad's place, Lawrence Carr's place.
So the house that you first moved to in Coronado Beach, is the house we remember as Aunt Corbell's.
That's correct.
That was your original house.
That's right.
Yes, because Grandma Wright had a place right next to a duplex right next to it later on.
Well, that's after the war.
That's right. That's right.
I think Philip built that house. Philip Wright. So Coronado Beach, like I said, there wasn't but about 100 people lived over there then. And you take from Public Shopping Center, 3rd Avenue, to Searle Mountain, nothing but scrub palmetto and washboard road.
That's great. Was there a bridge? Already a bridge here? A wooden bridge?
Well, yeah, the wooden bridge, the North Bridge, had palmetto pilings. And of course, the North Causeway was mangrove swamps on either side. And there was all this Buena Vista and Waterway East and West, that's all pumped in land now.
What they call Bushell Island today?
Well, Bushell Island came along later.
All right.
But it's pumped in land too.
What do you remember about first meeting members of the Wright family, particularly Clyde and Phil and my mother Hazel?
Well, I remember the family had a picnic down at the Haulover Canal. I don't think many people, maybe I know Clyde would remember this. Had a picnic there, and I believe there was a floating dock there. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And they had a bunch of decoys tied up there in this floating dock. And one of them got loose, and I proceeded to walk out after it. And there's deep water there. And Clyde and Philip were fishing down about 15, 20 feet, to the west. And they saw this straw hat floating in the river, and they saw me, thought it was a crab at first. But Clyde jumped in and saved my life.
Oh, you couldn't swim?
Oh, no, I was 4 or 5 years old. And he,
So you do remember that about Clyde then, don't you?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard there were a couple of pretty tough customers when they were growing up.
Yeah.
The right boys.
Yeah. Another experience I remember with out at the old Wright Grove home, they were sitting on a porch with a Winchester rifle, and I was out there playing with some mud or whatever, about the same age, and it just accidentally went off and the bullet hit beside me and threw mud all over me. Another.
That's classic. That's classic.
Yeah.
So one time, Clyde saved you from drowning. The other time, he almost shot you.
That's right. That's right.
But anyway,
Getting back to Coronado Beach.
sure.
They had a daily newspaper there then called the New Smyrna Beach Daily News. And I finally got a job delivering papers over on the beach side with New Smyrna Beach Daily News.
At that time, Coronado Beach was a separate community.
It was
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
And
So is this your first job that you sort of
that's
remember?
first job. I had probably, maybe 35, 40 customers. And the subscription was 15 cents a week. And I would go around on Saturday morning to collect 15 cents from each customer. And sometimes some of them would say, well, can you wait till next week?
I believe it.
Yeah.
Times were tough.
Yeah, they were tough. And then another occasion, they had a subscription contest. It seems like I sold the most subscriptions or was instrumental in doing it, so I got to go to the World's Fair
Wow.
in Chicago. I think the fair was, when would that have been?
I don't know.
In the early 30s,
Uh-huh.
whenever it was. And I went up there by myself on the bus, and they put me up in a hotel, went to the fair, and came back on the bus. Then
Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, it was, they had all this modern stuff going on there.
Electric lights and fancy stuff like that.
And the different automobiles and stuff like that. So let's see. I graduated from New Smyrna Beach High School in June of 1937. And I played on the Barracuda football team, let's see, my junior and senior year.
You were a halfback, weren't you?
I was right guard.
Oh, my dad said you were a good halfback.
No.
Now, I don't know, maybe he had you confused with
No,
somebody.
right guard. And my number was 75, I remember that. And we won, in my junior year, we won every game except DeLand, and we tied that.
Wow.
And so Russ Bullard was a coach, and I think Johnny Offutt, too, was assistant coach. And so Russ Bullard thought we were so good, he got us a game with Landon High School up in Jacksonville the next season. We went up there, and they ran 2 plays against us all night and beat us 42-0.
Just on the same 2 plays.
2 plays.
They found a weakness somewhere, didn't they?
It's Fort Myers all over.
Yeah.
Well, so after high school,
Well, how many were in your senior class? How big was your senior
The
class?
senior class, I'd say about 25.
And who were your, can you recall, or
Well, I
would you care
remember,
some of your best friends? or-
Robbie Johnson, he was a fullback on our team. There was Jackie Stowe and Alvin McGee and Carl Johnson. I remember him.
Are these long-time New Smyrna Beach
They were-
residents?
Well, they're all scattered out
Yeah.
now, and some of them are died.
I interrupted you. You're talking about somebody Johnson, and then
Carl Johnson.
Carl, yeah.
Yeah. And then there was Aldous Herring and of course Hayward Paxton and Richard Paxton. They all weren't in my class, but it was all
Yeah.
close there.
What did you do? Did you have any more favorite high school memories, or are those the things right there that stick out the most?
Well, not this sticks out right now. After high school, I got word that you could go to this CMTC camp, Citizens Military Training Camp, up at, so it was at Tybee Beach. That's near Savannah, off Savannah, and they would give you so much a mile on the railroad to go, and if you calculated that up and back, well, you had some left, you know, spending money. And so I did that. It was really just basic military training, marching, and then we were able to operate a Browning automatic machine gun and stuff like that. And then I had already enrolled in Purdue University. And the reason I went there is my dad wanted me to study agriculture, and they had a good agricultural school there. And this was a recommendation of old Jack Cox. He was an accountant there, accountant teacher in the high school. So he had been from Indiana, and he knew that Purdue was a good school, and so that's where I went. And I arrived there with my violin.
Oh, you're a violin player?
Yeah, I was pretty serious about that.
Really?
Yeah, it's behind you there on the wall.
Maybe we can get you to play it for us.
No. But
So you ride with your violin?
yeah. And first year there, I played in the Purdue Orchestra, but I just gave that up. But I joined the Phi Kappa fraternity, and they treated me just like just with open arms and all that. I visited some other fraternities there, but they seemed to be the ones that I liked the best.
Were a lot of the members of that fraternity agriculture majors?
Most of them were engineers. Purdue's primarily an engineering school. And of course those folks in the fraternity always accused me of playing my house bill with Confederate money.
Confederate money.
But it was a different experience for me. I saw snow and all that. In the dorm, it was all open at night, and sometimes when the wind was blowing, snow would blow in there on your blanket.
Well, you had good air conditioning.
Yeah.
Did you graduate from Purdue?
I did. I graduated in. First off, they wanted me to choose a major in agriculture, and a professor, J.J. Davis, made such a good he was an entomologist, and he made such a good presentation. I said, by golly, I'm going to study bugs. So
There you go.
I studied, majored in entomology.
Isn't it amazing how much of an impression a good professor can make on you as a young student?
A good speaker, and that way.
So he helped you with a really major career decision.
Yeah. And then on my thesis,
So you went on to graduate school?
No.
I'm sorry.
No. In my senior year, I wrote my thesis on the utilization of carbohydrates in the honeybee.
How about that?
And I did all kind of tests with different kinds of sugars and food for honeybees. And because honeybees have to overwinter and they have to have food, you know, you put that retainer on the top of the hive.
No, I don't know that.
Yeah.
You mean...
It's a glass jar of food for them during the winter. So I studied which food would be best for them, because I'd take little cages of bees, and those that stayed alive was the ones that I thought was, you know, that had sufficient food.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. So, I think one of the questions you asked me is why or how I joined the Marine Corps.
Right. Did you join before the war?
I did.
Okay.
In those times, well, there was talk about we're going to get into a war. You know, I'm talking about 1941. And so rather than be drafted, I decided that I was going to join the Navy, Air Corps. Well, the recruiter went through a lot of questions with me, and one of the questions was, do you have hay fever? And I said, yes, I do. I have a mild case of it. He said, well, let me find out. So he put some solution on my skin there, and it turned real red.
Yeah.
So he says, if you're a Navy pilot, you cannot have an attack of hay fever and fly an airplane.
It probably makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So that's the Navy.
Yes.
So they had a recruiting outfit down in Cincinnati, of course Purdue's at West Lafayette, Indiana. And so I hitchhiked down to Cincinnati and interviewed the officer there, and he asked us, of course the Marine Corps is part of the Navy, he asked me the same question about hay fever, and I said, no, I didn't have any hay fever.
Oh, so no. Well, you really wanted to join the military.
So I signed up, and then I had to hitchhike back to school. And so after school... School is still Purdue? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, back to Purdue. I graduated there in June of '41. And you're talking about Johnny Offutt. Well, Johnny Offutt and my sister and my mother came all the way from Key West up there to see my graduation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they drove...
Key West?
Pardon?
You said Key West?
Yeah, that's where Johnny and Catherine were. In Key West.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
He taught school down there.
Boy, Key West to West Lafayette.
That's quite a trip.
Yeah, that's a long way.
Yeah.
Oh,
But anyway, he drove up in
trip.
front of the fraternity house in an old beat-up Ford, and it just embarrassed the hell out of me. But anyway, I was glad they came.
Sure you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you when you heard that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor?
Well, let's see, that would be in December 7th, '41. After I graduated from Purdue, I got a job with the Department of Agriculture, trying to eliminate the Japanese beetle in that area. And we went out and sprayed lawns and everything with lead arsenal. You couldn't do that now. And then I worked with them up to that time.
You breathed a lot of lead, probably.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know whether I did that or not, but we had to mix it in the tank. And well, I went to a movie on that Sunday afternoon, and when it came out, there was extras all over the street, and I guess nobody knew where Pearl Harbor was. And so,
No, you're right.
I got my orders to report to Quantico, Virginia in about 2 weeks. So I came home here for, 2 weeks. I got on a train and went to Quantico, Virginia, to start
Basic training.
OCS, my training. And I got my commission after we'd been through basic training and all that. I got my commission as second lieutenant in June. And so in June, I got orders to report to Camp Linda Vista. It's near San Diego, and I joined the 22nd Marine Regiment, and attached to it was the 2nd Separate Pack Howitzer Battalion. And I don't know why I was assigned to that, other than I had some artillery training at Purdue the first year or two.
Probably was the reason. Yeah.
Pardon?
That probably was the reason.
Yeah. And so in July, we sailed on the USS Lurleen. That was a
Lurleen?
Lurleen. That was a regular passenger
Mhm.
ship. What am I going to say?
Well, it was a civilian vessel before
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the Navy
They-
took over to transport troops in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was smoking at the time, and I figured I'd run out of cigarettes, so I bought a whole case. I did.
That's
And stored
wonderful.
them in the stateroom.
I bet you were the most popular guy on that ship.
Stored them in the stateroom. And when we got to a destination, which was Western Samoa, you could buy all the cigarettes you needed for a nickel a pack.
Wow.
So, but anyway.
So you couldn't sell any on the black market because they were cheaper there than...
We wound up in Apia, on the island of Upolu, which is Western Samoa. And then we were put in a bivouac area with pyramidal tents. And then we were moved up to the north end of the island there, to the headquarters of the 3rd Marine Brigade.
You're still in the Samoa area.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And the word came down that they needed a 2nd lieutenant for aide-de-camp to General Thomas E. Watson. And I was the one that selected to do that. So I reported to him, and I had duty as a general mess officer and had charge of the post office there. And so I really didn't have any training as far as the infantry or artillery is concerned, but did get a lot of experience with the general staff and all that.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, met several of the staff officers, and one of them was Lieutenant Colonel Wallace M. Green, Jr. And he later became Commandant of Marine Corps. I've got a file on him here somewhere. General Watson, well, I'll have to back up here a little bit. 3rd Marine Brigade consisted of the 22nd Marine Regiment and the 2nd Separate Pack Howitzer Battalion. And then there was another outfit connected with it. It was called the 3rd Marine Brigade. And so the regiment trained there, and then we were ordered to Maui. And we trained some more there. And then it became the something, the 5th Amphibious Corps something. And General Watson was in charge of that. And so we sailed for the Marshall Islands. I remember when we were on Maui, he took me to visit some people there as a courtesy, you know. One of them was the Baldwins, the piano people.
Oh, ball and piano.
Yeah. and they had big pineapple plantation there. So we went to their place just as a courtesy call because the regiment was using their property or whatever, just a diplomatic thing. And so he rung the bell, but nobody answered the bell. So I remember he took his card and folded one corner and stuck it in the door. And he told me that meant they didn't have to respond to his call.
So the significant, he used this to open the door, or he was just leaving a
He
message?
left his card in
Okay.
the door, but he
Mhm.
folded one corner.
Yeah,
There must be a protocol to that some way. That if you fold it one way, well, you don't have to
I see. This was some
acknowledge
kind
his
of a
visit
code.
or whatever. Well, let's see where.
Did if you were on Mount, I guess did you see some of the devastation that the Japanese had done?
No, they
in Pearl?
didn't do anything on Maui. That was Pearl Harbor. That's Oahu.
I've got them mixed up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Oahu.
You're absolutely right.
Pearl
That's
Harbor's
right.
on Oahu.
That's right.
No, there was no devastation there.
Not in Maui. No, that's right. Did you go to Pearl? But
Well,
Why-
we just went in there temporarily in the ship. When we boarded the ship to go to the Marshall Islands. We went into harbor there for some reason. And let's see. Well, we sailed from Pearl to the Marshall Islands. And
which one of the Marshall Islands did you go to?
the first one was the 3rd Marine Brigade was in reserve there for Kwajalein.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Army actually went in there and took that island. And we were in reserve. And General Watson and I went ashore after they'd secured the island. And you would not imagine the devastation that a 16-inch battleship shell could do. But it'd make holes in the ground as big as this house.
We're talking now about
Kwajalein.
Kwajalein. Okay. So
And observing those shells hitting the island, you could see them tossing coconut palm trees 300 or 400 feet in the air. But it's just utter devastation. And of course, the climate is awful hot and humid. And there's got dead Japanese laying all around, all bloated up and all that.
the stench must have been horrible.
And they had bulldozers there digging trenches, just pushing them in these trenches, covering them up.
When you went ashore, was the island reasonably well under control?
Oh yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah. I went ashore with General Watson, and then we were in reserve. So we were ordered to capture Inuiatak. And so when we got there in the staging area, they ordered me into a Higgins boat to go in about
Higgins boat's a landing craft?
Yeah. Higgins boat to go offshore about 300 yards and keep them informed as to how the landing was progressing. So that's what I did.
This is at Inuiatak.
Inuiatak. And then later on, I went back aboard ship, and then the general and his staff and I, we went ashore. It was the same old thing, all
Everything blown up.
and dead
Bodies
laying
around.
all around.
How would that on either both Kwajalein and Inuiatak? Were there any of the natives still there and
No,
surviving this? Okay,
no. Not that I remember.
so you don't remember any at all?
I don't remember.
Were the
They're
troops
small islands, you know.
Yes. Well, I don't guess there's much left of Inuiatak anyway. That's where they did the testing of the atomic bomb.
Anyway, we were ordered, I had been promoted to captain then, and the brigadier general did not rate a captain as an aide. So we went back to Pearl Harbor, and I said goodbye to him, got orders to go to Camp Pendleton, California. And so I was there a short time, and then I got orders to go to Quantico, Virginia, to Staff and Command School. So I was at Quantico from about July of 44 to November of 44. And they taught us all about staff functions and operations and all that, but it was a regular school.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, Quantico, I was ordered to Guadalcanal to join the 6th Marine Division, and they assigned me to Company G, 2nd Battalion, 22nd Marine Regiment, all the way from
What a memory.
staff and command school to
So now you've come from the Marshall Island area,
Yeah,
all the way back to California, all the way to Virginia. You've
Yeah.
got some training, and now you go back to California, and now you're going back to the Pacific,
I'm going back to Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal.
Yeah. And I joined the 6th Marine Division. And they assigned me to Company G, 2nd Battalion, 22nd Marine Regiment. And we trained there, and we were training for Okinawa was what we were doing. And they built a little village there called Bonegiville that sort of assimilated what we'd run into in Okinawa. And we did that training around between the buildings and things like that. And also did training in some of the mountain area there. And so, let's see, get a drink of water.
So you're in Guadalcanal, and you're actually training to go to Okinawa.
Correct.
You're preparing for the mountainous terrain that you're going to encounter there.
Yeah. So we got aboard ship, and the division and all the 10th Army is what it was, and the 6th Marine Division was part of the 10th Army, and they all staged at Ulithi Atoll. And it's a big atoll, and as far as you can see, there's aircraft carriers and battleships and cruisers and destroyers. And
All assembled for the invasion of Okinawa.
And they stayed there 2 days, and a lot of the Marines went ashore to what they call Mogmog. They had beer, and they had just a party for 2 days. And we got back aboard an LST and went from Ulithi to Okinawa in an LST, or I did.
How many miles was that, you
I
suppose?
don't know offhand.
No, but it was
800 anyhow, or better.
It's a flat bottom boat.
that must have been, there were a lot of seasick guys, because they've been ashore
there were
partying
about-
and drinking, and now
there
they're
were a
out.
lot of them got seasick.
I bet.
I got a little nauseated, but never did get sick. And then, can you shut it off?
Sure can. It's off.
Oh, I got. You pick up where you think you were, because I did not make a note.
Ready to go to Okinawa.
Well, yeah, we were staging it at Ulithi. And as I was saying, the battleships and aircraft carriers and destroyers and cruisers and transports that you could, about as far as you could see. And so we sailed to Okinawa in an LST, not sail, whatever you call it, which is landing ship transport, I guess you'd call it. And inside there were Amtraks. And so we arrived offshore there on the morning of April the 1st, 1945. It was cool, and it was clear, and one Japanese plane came over, and I saw it shot down. And then we had the hour of we were supposed to depart, and went to the departure line, and I was with the 2nd Battalion, 22nd Marines. We went in on Green Beach 1. And our regiment was on the left flank. And we went,
You're among some of the early landies on this island.
yeah, we landed on the first wave.
The first wave.
Yeah. There was no resistance. We came out of the Amtrak 90 miles an hour, but no resistance. And we didn't really get any resistance all the way to the north end of the island. I have to show you a map of it. It was to the north end of the island.
Do you want to look at a map, or can you get?
I'm
Okay.
familiar with it.
Yeah. All right.
We went all the way to the north end of the island, and what the Japanese general had decided that he would not fight us at the shoreline. He consolidated his force, I think it was the 32nd Japanese Army, in the Shuri Hill Mass, which is in the south end of the island. And so that's what he decided to do. And so we went to the north end, and the Army started south, and they got held up as intense fire and everything there. So they called on the 6th Marine Division to come south and help them out. So that's what we did, and it started to rain. And it was mud and rain and just miserable. You sleep in the foxhole at night with water in it. And so we came down to the Asakawa, and our battalion was ordered to cross that. And they got involved in Charlie Hill, and they called it Sugarloaf Hill, which they had crossfire. And so we just lost.
So the Marines were caught in a crossfire from
Yeah.
2 hills.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we lost so many men in our company that they decided that we just better pull back, and then they brought in reinforcements. And then finally we went down towards Naha, the main city there in Okinawa. It was all bombed out and everything. And finally ended up at the southern end of the island after fighting all the way.
So were you with the group that was caught in that crossfire?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It must have been just horrible. You
Yeah,
saw a bunch of your
well,
friends.
I remember one experience. I was very lucky that I was in a foxhole and my buddy was near me, and of course I said it had rained a lot and it was muddy, and a Japanese knee mortar shell landed right in between us in the mud. It didn't go off.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't detonate. That's as close as I ever came to anything.
But so you almost drowned in Oak Hill. Clyde tried to shoot you as a kid,
Yeah.
and you have a mortar shell that
Yeah.
lands right between
Well,
you guys and
yeah.
doesn't detonate.
Yeah.
You live in a charmed life.
And then the Japanese had what we call Pistol Pete, big old gun down the south end of the island, and they never did learn how to mass fire like, you know, the Americans would use their artillery pieces to focus on one target. But they never did learn that. They would always one gun, one target, one intersection of this. And that damn thing would come whizzing over every 5 or 6 minutes, and you just hope.
You just hear it go.
Yeah.
You heard it going by.
Yeah.
Of course, if you didn't hear it, that was the
Yeah,
bad
that was
deal
it.
then. 'Cause
Anyway, we got the south end of the island, and
is this the island? I just got to be ignorant here, but I got to ask this question. If it's way off base, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Is this the island with Suribachi on it?
no, that's Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. No,
'Cause I knew that the south-
I'm glad I wasn't there.
Yes.
Anyway, the division was ordered back to Guam for a rehab. And so it was there. That's when they dropped the atomic bomb. And I'd been overseas enough to where I got to come home. I got home in October of '45. So that was I was discharged at the Department of Pacific in San Francisco. They wanted me to stay in the Marine Corps, and I said no. I promised my dad I'd come back and help him out in the Grove.
I want to ask you one question before we get back to the States. In his book about Okinawa, the Marine sledge, EB or JB?
I hadn't gotten to that yet.
You haven't gotten that part about the Okinawa?
No.
Okay. Because he pointed out that at night you really couldn't sleep because the Japs were crawling around and crawling into foxholes and cutting people up.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you
I
personally...
didn't have that experience. The worst experience I had was like the grenade I was telling you about, and this Pistol Pete. Not Pistol Pete, that
The cannon.
The Cannon Pete. I don't know why we call him Pistol Pete, but that's what we did.
Let's call it something. Yeah. So.
No, I didn't get into anything like that.
The Japs apparently were very clever at being burrowed in underground, and you walk by them, and then somebody
yeah.
shooting at you.
And
Did you see any?
They landed on Guadalcanal, you know, in '42. They were confronted with these snipers that they could camouflage themselves with
Top of these coconut palms.
palms and all that. Yeah.
But anyway, Okinawa. So your worst experiences were on, because that was a
Okinawa. Yeah.
very major undertaking.
Yeah.
And the Japs sort of just waited until you came to them. They didn't go to you and meet you on the
They
beaches.
didn't meet us on the beach. That's right.
So then the war's over, and you then go back first to Guam. Is that what you
I
said?
went to Guam, and we were
How did it feel when you heard the war was over?
elated. Yeah, I was in Guam maybe 3 weeks, and then I got back on the old USS in Lurleen. Came home on that ship.
Boy, there were a bunch of I bet there's a lot. How bad was the seasickness on these ships for guys that had never spent much time at sea?
Not really too bad.
It didn't bother you much.
No.
Was it a pretty stable platform? It wasn't.
Well, it didn't have stabilizers, I know that, but you know the Pacific wasn't too.
Well, some of the Jap subs now didn't know the war was over. Did you have any problem with submarines?
No.
Like the Indianapolis was sunk after the war
That's correct.
was over.
They
So-
well, that took the atomic bomb out to Tinian.
That's right.
Going out on the Lurleen, they do zigzag like this.
Mhm.
They didn't go in a straight line for that purpose, you know, to avoid submarines.
Okay, now the war's over and you're elated and you go to Guam and then you're sailing back to the States in the Lurleen.
Yeah,
How do you spell that?
Lurline, Lurleen.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
All
a
right.
passenger ship. I don't know whether it's still in existence.
All right, so everybody's elated, everybody's going home, and you're
Well-
going back to San Francisco?
Yeah. The division actually was preparing for the invasion of Japan,
Right.
and the operation was known as Olympic. Well, they went to Japan, but that was just for occupying, occupation.
To have landed in Japan would have been the bloodiest mess
Yeah.
ever created
I
in the
think
history
so.
of the world.
I
Probably.
think so.
So,
Yeah,
as much as we all hate the atomic bomb,
yeah.
that in the long run saved a lot of probably lives on both sides,
I agree.
because they would have fought till there was not one left,
Yeah.
probably.
They
Isn't
usually,
it, what did you feel like fighting an enemy that thought it was honorable to die, and they weren't afraid of dying?
no.
That makes them a formidable opponent.
Yes, it
Doesn't
does. Yeah, and they, of course, they didn't have the equipment or the rations or any of these things that we had. We just had,
They didn't lack in bravery, though, did they? I mean,
No, they didn't.
They were tough.
we had abundance of everything, rations and ammunition and support and all that. But they were clever and tenacious.
Yeah, well, when you don't fear dying and you think it's honorable, that makes it tough. I mean, to
Yeah.
face that sort of
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
because our lives in the United States are just sort of special. Nobody wants to die, for God's sakes. I sure wouldn't. Anyway, so you're back. You go back to the States. You survived this,
Yeah.
and you're going to now. You've agreed to join your dad.
Yeah. I agreed to he was ill at that time, and he had
So this
cancer.
is 1945 still. or
45, 45. And he went up, the only hospital we had was one in St. Augustine then. And so he had this trouble with his stomach. And so he went up there and the hospital in St. Augustine, and they opened him up and closed him right back up, said 6 months. So he died in March of 46. So
Well, you at least got to see your dad again
Oh, yeah.
before you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He taught me some things about the grove business. And
Sure, he
then
did. Yeah.
I got a job down at the Oak Hill Citrus Growers, and then finally they appointed me to manage the association. And we had about the co-op, and we had about 2,000 acres of citrus grove to take care of. All the way from, well, up here at Port Orange, they had Palm Orange Grove, and all the way down to South Volusia County and northern Brevard County. That's where all the groves were. And we would harvest about 300 to 400,000 boxes of fruit every year, and it was mostly
Harvesting and packing them was a
Pardon?
lot of Harvesting and packing them was all sort of done by hand.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't all mechanized, I guess,
Yeah,
like it.
we were in the fresh fruit business, shipping fresh fruit, and then of course all the elimination went to the canneries, and so I stayed there for the next 40 years, managing that association, and then here comes the freezes in the 80s, and it destroyed a lot of the groves. So we took what acreage we had and went down and joined them citrus growers. Well, they were in the same fix, so they had to dissolve that too. And so I retired from that, I think, in about 1990.
Can we back up a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I meant to ask earlier, but your description of things in the Pacific was so interesting, I forgot to slip in the question. Where were you when you heard that Johnny Offutt was killed? Were you still in the States, or were you out in the Pacific then?
I didn't have any communication with, only letters. I can't remember exactly. I'm sure my mother or my sister would have told me that. And I don't remember exactly when he I guess
All right.
it would have to be after.
It was shortly after Normandy. They were
Normandy.
going to St. Lo or something. And,
Yeah, it was after Normandy.
It's in 44.
44.
okay, so you didn't hear about this at all
No.
until probably after the war?
Well, I could have heard through correspondence. I just don't remember.
Did you know Johnny reasonably well?
He was assistant coach.
That's right. You said that. And then they
Yeah.
moved to Key West after he and Catherine got married.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you describe him? None of us knew him. I knew
Very-
him just barely sitting in a uniform in Aunt Corbell's house right before he went across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he was a very outgoing person and very friendly and very popular. He was sort of like Catherine, He was a very popular person. I didn't know him that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he and Catherine hadn't been married that long, had they? Or I shouldn't say that. I don't know.
Well, they were married.
I only met him once. Yeah.
I should presume they were married. They had to be married while I was away, which would be
So they didn't get married till after you had.
I had gone to school.
Yes, that's right. You'd gone to Purdue.
Yeah. So they must have gotten married in the 1940s, somewhere along.
Well, they drove up there in that car and
Yeah,
embarrassed you at the
that's right.
fraternity house or whatever you said.
Yeah. So it would be between 37 and 40. before he won.
So as far as you're concerned, he was an all right person.
Yes, he was.
Really nice guy.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
saw him once.
Yeah.
Well, that was a shame.
Of
So,
course,
okay.
Mary Kay was born down there, and I think she was born, whether she was born here or Key West, I don't know. Have to ask Mary Kay that.
Well, so she'd probably be afraid of going. No, she wouldn't know where. Yeah, she would know where she was born.
Yeah,
she probably didn't know much about it. But anyway.
She would know where she
So okay, you're back here now in the States, and
you,
your dad is in the apparently final stages of a
Yeah.
bout with cancer,
yeah,
and you're now taking over in south central Florida,
well,
or southeast Florida,
well,
not south, central east
I
Florida.
took over his management of his groves, and then I was appointed manager of the Oak Hill Citrus Growers Association. And we were part of that co-op.
When you first got back to the New Smyrna area, have things really changed very much in the years you'd been away, or is it still pretty much the same town? And also
Well,
Coronado Beach?
I think it was pretty much the same. Not a whole lot of difference.
Probably glad to get back, though,
Yeah.
for goodness sakes.
Well, things just didn't really get off the ground till they started the Cape down there. All this.
So it's always been kind of a sleepy little town, so.
That's correct. Until they started building these condos and things like that. In the meantime, I bought this lot, and Philip Wright was the one that built the house, as you know. Built the house in 1962.
Was this Sweating Right then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while he was building the house, every day there's something to do every day, something new to come up. We want this, we want that. Every day for about 6 months. And it was completed in November of '62. Started in May.
Have they built their houses right next door to
They
you?
have.
Yeah, their houses were already there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
So anyway, when you got back to New Smyrna, it really didn't seem that different than when you left it.
not a lot.
And Coronado Beach, probably when you got back,
Well,
some of the roads still weren't paved over there, were they?
a lot of roads was just shell.
Because I remember when I was a kid growing up over there, there were only 2 paved roads.
Yeah.
And, there was Flagler Avenue and North Peninsula up to the Coast Guard Station.
Well, there was a big dispute as to about whether it should join the city or not.
Absolutely. It wasn't until
In fact,
47 they did, I
A
think.
lot of our family just had 2 sides to it. One of them did and one of them didn't.
Oh, really? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There wasn't general agreement about
No,
this.
it wasn't.
When you got back, did you go see any of the movies that were made about the battles on the Pacific Islands? I mean, there was Okinawa and Sands of Iwo Jima and all these flicks. I was just wondering if you saw any of them.
Well,
Were they
I'm
realistically portrayed, or were they probably really Hollywooded up? And
Well, I'm thinking of the Midway
yes,
battle. I don't know anything about, wasn't there,
yes.
but it seems to be pretty accurate from what I've read. Then there were some, John Wayne was in some of those movies.
Yeah, he was Sergeant Stryker in Oakland and
I think-
Iwo Jima. That's right.
I think most of them portray pretty much the
Because that's, for Ron and my age, all we really knew about World War II, I wasn't reading much then, and I'll be honest, because I was only 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
But all we knew about was the movies, because a bunch of these movies came
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
about Bataan.
and Pearl Harbor and all.
Oh, so, yeah, Pearl Harbor and
Yeah.
Sands of Iwo Jima and
Yeah.
Okinawa
Yeah.
and a number of the other, Guadalcanal Diary
Yeah.
and Wake Island.
Yeah.
A number of these
Yeah.
to try and, a lot of them were trying to rally American folks about contributing to war bonds and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
So
They're
how
fairly
true they really were, I don't, you know.
fairly accurate, I would say.
Well, it was a horrible time, and
Yeah.
thank goodness it's over. Well, this has been wonderful. I just sort of like to ask you one question. How would you sort of most like to be remembered by your cousins and your close friends? I mean, here you have this very interesting life. You've told me endless number of things that I didn't have a clue about, and I think that probably Ron knows less since he joined the family later than I did. So,
Well, there's so many, when you're 90 years old, or will be next month, there's so many little details that you've forgotten.
well, there's certainly a lot of them you've remembered.
Yeah. But I don't know. I told my father I'd take care of his groves, and I did that. So I didn't sell them. I took care of them and expanded on them, and so I think that's what I would like to be remembered, that I took care of his business as he wanted me to do, and I did that.
JC, were you close to your father?
Not as close as I was to my mother. My father was a hard worker, and he didn't say too much, but you didn't want to cross him. He was a small man. He probably didn't weigh but 120 pounds, about 5'5" or 6". He had to wear ladies' shoes. I mean, his feet
They
were
were
that
small.
small. But he,
Good question.
Where was he born?
He was born in Greenwood, South Carolina, and he came down here when he was about 16 years old. His mother and father died, and I don't know why he ended up in the Oak Hill area, but he went to work for the E-Day Company down there, which is a citrus outfit. And then I guess he met my mother. They were married in 1917. And he started an orange grove down there south of Oak Hill and built a house, a nice house.
They call that Shiloh?
East Shiloh, don't they? It's something Point. And that's where Catherine was born. She doesn't want to admit it, but
There's an area down there called Black Point. That's not where you're talking about.
No, that's out in the lagoon.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Shiloh Point, I think, is what they call it. It's where the US-1 veers off to the right and you go down towards the Cape. But he built a house there. And like I said, 1924, they decided to move up here at Coronado Beach, and build a house there. My mother was always involved in the church, Coronado Methodist Church.
She and Hazel, my mother, were pretty close. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they were both involved in the.
I remember your mother used to be the cashier at the school lunch.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. And you go through the line, and she would, if I had something on my tray, I think it was 15 cents that you had lunch. If I had something on the tray that you knew my mother didn't want me to have, she'd tell me about it.
Oh, your mother had eyes at the school.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Sometime in the 80s, I talked to you about the following. Either that or I just dreamt this. I was interested in what went on in one of these orange juice concentrating plants where they made the frozen orange juice.
Yeah.
And you told me to visit some plant. I think I talked to you about this.
Plymouth Citrus Products.
Plymouth Citrus Products.
Yeah.
And I went over there. You said to go over there and see them.
Yeah.
And I went over and introduced myself. And well, they didn't know who I was. I was just at the faculty at the
I was a
university.
director in that plant.
Okay, that's the reason. Because when I said, well, J.C. Deal sent me to, if Jake said it's all right, it's all right. I mean, they gave me the grand tour of this
Yeah.
plant. So you were in charge of that operation.
Well, I wasn't in charge. I was a director.
You were the director.
Yeah.
Directors aren't in charge.
Well, they make policy,
Okay.
but they have a general manager that manages it.
That's where they were concentrating
Yeah.
juice
Yeah. Well,
for.
that's where they take the water out of the juice
It was an impressive, these huge centrifuges and
Yeah.
stuff were, it was amazing
And
operation.
the extractors
Mhm.
squeezing the juice out. And all the cans rolling. Well, all these manufacturing places that have a certain way of they roll the cans and fill them and all that kind of stuff.
And even extracting some of the oils from the peel.
Well, they use that for cow feed and oil, citrus oil. But the pulp they dried the pulp.
It's a wonderful smell inside there. You've got
Yeah.
all these fragrant, volatile
Yeah.
things from the peel, probably a lot of it.